Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Investor Workshop. My name is Dean Gasson, so I am an Applied Research Manager here at Adastral Park. So no, this isn't a virtual background. This actually is Adastral Park, where we're broadcasting live from over these 2 days. So the workshop itself that you're joining, so we'll be looking at Investor 101. What does a startup need to know when looking for investment? What are the challenges scaling an AI company? How do investors assess a company? And more insights from our speakers. Speaking of which, we have Sally Goodsell joining us, the Managing Director of Anglia Capital Group. We have Ed Stacey, Managing Partner of IQ Capital Partners, and Richard Lamb, Knowledge Transfer Partnerships Manager from Innovate UK. Before we go to them, it's just a reminder that if you want to interact with us, you can post questions on the Feedloop platform, where I'll pick them up, and as well as the fact that you can select the Q&A option on the video link there, and you can post them direct to us there too. But I think without further ado, we'll see our panelists. So over to Sally.
Lovely, thank you very much, Dean, and thank you very much for having me along today. I hear the festival's been a great success, so that's lovely. So hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Sally Goodsell, and as Dean said, I'm the Managing Director of Anglia Capital Group, which is the leading business angel network in the Anglia region. So just a little bit about myself. I spent 15 years in the city as an investment banker. I then became CEO of a seed capital fund. We invested about 100 million over 10 years into around 300 early stage and startup businesses. Since 2016, I've lived in beautiful Suffolk and have been involved with the Anglia Capital Group, which, as I say, is the local business angel group. We are generalist investors. We invest across a whole wide range of tech, including agri-tech, medical tech, all sorts of things, really. We're always looking for new, exciting businesses to have a look at. What we're interested in seeing is scalability, ambition, and a great entrepreneur to invest in. So look forward to receiving all of your questions, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot later about what else we can do for you. Thank you very much. Over back to you, Dean.
Cool, thank you, Sally. If we can hear from Ed. Hi, Ed.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ed Stacey. I'm a founder and a managing partner at VC firm IQ Capital Partners. And at IQ Capital, we invest solely in deep tech companies, and so AI is obviously a major focus for us. We've been investing in deep tech for quite a while now. Our first fund launched in 2007. When we started, there were a handful of firms in the UK investing in early stage tech, and they were things like enterprise software, and at the time there was a big shift into mobile application software, and of course SaaS platforms, which is a trend that was just getting started then. But there weren't many of what today we'd call deep tech investors in the UK, and although that is starting to change quite quickly now. And there's a couple of reasons we really like deep tech investments, and particularly AI investments. And one is that the corporate world has, as it were, finally woken up over the last few years to just how valuable this space really is. It's realized the huge potential value of AI and deep tech in general, as you've been hearing, I'm sure, in the conference. And just how these AI innovations can completely disrupt their existing business models. And therefore, these corporations are much more willing to buy AI products from startups, and that's quite a big change that we've seen. And importantly, of course, they're willing to acquire them as well, which is clearly very important as an investor. And that's even compared to just a few years ago. Another reason that we like AI is that it gives a very good deep tech moat, and that gives founders time that they need to iterate on their products, and therefore it gives them the time and a much better chance to find that elusive product market fit, which you absolutely need to get right before you can scale up. And a third reason is fairly obvious in a way, is that AI tends to be delivered as software, And there's a great ecosystem of software and data technologies established now that, again, we've been hearing from in the conference, that, can really support these kinds of business and help them scale up quickly. So, this means it's possible to create very large and successful AI companies without having to raise necessarily huge amounts of capital.
Mm.
So in terms of what we look for at IQ as an investment, we like to see either an AI breakthrough at an early stage, which may be a faster algorithm or more accurate algorithm, and obviously one that has potential to translate into a product in a big market. Or perhaps at a bit later stage, we like to see an application of AI into an industrial vertical that has the potential to really disrupt that industry and build out a defensible position over time. So please do take a look at our website to find out more about us. And obviously, please do feel free to send me your pitches for AI startups. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. And I think last but no means least, Richard.
Nearly fell into the trap of talking on mute. Hello there. My name is Richard Lamb. I'm the KTP Program Manager at Innovate UK, which is possibly one of the longest job titles that you could possibly ever wish to have for. Anyway, I'm here today to talk a little bit about KTP, but about grants in general. But KTP is my specialism and my passion, so I'm going to spend most of my time talking about that. I was on a session earlier today with senior managers at Innovate, and over the last 12 months, despite COVID, we've funded somewhere in the region of 30,000 projects within Innovate. So we're a very active space that you should be looking if you're looking for grant funding. That funding comes in a range of shapes and sizes. KTP is one of many different funding streams that are available within Innovate, and within KTP, we are Innovate's largest single program. We have over 800 projects running at any one time, and a huge number of them include an element of AI. Quite how many, it's hard to unpick, because we don't necessarily classify them as being a purely AI project. It could be an AI project that's running in the food sector or in a different sector, and that's how we classify them. So when I've been trying to tease out in preparation for this session how many AI projects we've got, I think I've really struggled. My guess is that over a third of our projects involve an element of AI somewhere along the line. So a significant proportion involve it. And I think that's something that's kind of common across a lot of the Innovate funding areas. We don't have anything specifically for AI, but we want to look at how you're applying AI as a technology in a whole range of sectors, whether that's healthcare, future travel, or as we have in KTP, a range of projects that are looking perhaps a bit closer to the user, where we've got projects looking at facilities management, advertising, lots of stuff around marketing, as you might imagine. But Orbital Media, who are sponsoring this event and helped create it a couple of years ago, they've had 3 KTPs and have grown significantly off the back of those projects. I could happily go and spend the next half hour talking about KTP, but I won't. Hopefully it's a flavour of what Innovate has to offer.
Thank you so much, Richard, as well as Ed and Sally. So, yeah, I mean, I'd love to dive straight into sort of the investment sort of 101 for a startup. I mean, I'm a startup and I've got a great idea. What should I do next? Where do I go now? Who'd like to jump in?
I'll give a quite sort of slightly flippant response to start off with, and that is, of course, you're going to talk to your friends and family about it, but don't expect to get an honest answer from them. The honest answer comes from the marketplace. So get out there, talk to people, and find out if there really is a market for your product.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Engage with the market as soon as you can. Find out whether this, you really are. The question we always ask is, what problem are you solving? Are you going to be able to add to a company's profitability, or are you able to cut costs? And that's really the question you've got to ask. Is your product or service able to do that? And once you've found out that, then try and get to some sort of minimum viable product as soon as you possibly can, because certainly from an angel investor perspective, we don't really invest in ideas. There's got to be some traction there. There's got to be a minimum viable product, and I'm sure that's probably absolutely the same for most institutional investors as well. So first stage, test the market, get friends and families if you can to back you if you need a bit of cash, or bootstrap. Test the market, and then you might be ready to come to external form of finance if there's genuine growth potential.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd perhaps almost be harsher and say, look, there's plenty of ideas around its products that are hard to find, and what that means is that the problems that you think people have very rarely turn out to be exactly right. And so there's nothing like speaking to customers to kind of really understand the nuances of the problem. And sometimes, sometimes you find that when you understand the problem, it's going to be too difficult. You'll have to go and do something else. But sometimes it might be easier than you think, and actually 90% of what you planned in your engineering is actually unnecessary for the MVP, as Sally sort of referred to. So yeah, I agree. Nothing like talking to the market. I suppose what does that actually mean in practice?
That was my next question, actually. What does the market look like? I mean, are there reliable, unbiased bodies that can help with this, or are you relying on contacts that you've already got?
I think nowadays corporates are more willing to engage with startups, and especially they do have CVCs themselves, and they have innovation departments that are kind of interested in things that might be coming around the corner. So I think you'll get a sanity check from speaking to them, and if it sounds plausible at that point, they'll probably steer you on to someone in the corporation that you can have a deeper dive with.
There's a lot of sorry, Ed.
No, Karen.
There's a lot of specialist accelerators and incubators now where you can actually really get some good support, and they are in direct touch with the corporates. So you're going to get some very honest feedback on whether what you're doing is of value to them. So I think don't be paranoid about your idea. Be willing to share it. Be collaborative. Because very often it's not necessarily the first idea that you have, or the first idea of a product that's the one that's going to work. So just be open-minded to it. And if the market doesn't want that, then move on and find something else.
And one perhaps substitute for talking directly to the market is to talk to angel investors who may have been in corporations, relatively recently. And some of these angels have specialisms and kind of insights that are quite difficult to get directly from corporates. So always worth bearing in mind who you might be able to speak to in that universe.
Yeah, it's very true.
I think actually. The other thing, just for people to consider, particularly if you're a startup, if you've spun out of a university or still have strong links with your university, they've got a heap of support that's generally available to you, either as alumni or as spin outs. There's business clubs, conferences like this, all practical steps that you can take to get out there and talk to people, because it's people who are the market. And there are also formal programs. Innovate run one called iCure, that's ICURE, which is helping take university spin outs through a thought process and getting it sort of ready for market. Might even be able to get some money through that program to set your business up. But there's lots of different versions and flavors of that sort of support that's out there. Go and talk to people. I know it's difficult at the moment, but actually the flip side of us all being at home is that we're all tied to our computers. If you ping someone a message on LinkedIn, you've got a pretty good chance, I would say, of getting some kind of response.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think using your social media is really important at the moment, and actually reaching out to people. And this is probably the best time of all, because people have got a bit of time on their hands. As you say, they're not flying around everywhere. So yeah, use your contact base.
Just one other thing. I've talked about corporates. Corporates can be really difficult to get into unless you have someone to open the door for you. You can spend a lot of time knocking at their door. Don't ignore the huge wealth of small to medium-sized businesses that are in that we've got in the UK. Signal, sorry, not Signal. Most of the companies that are here and have been participating in the event, 75% of the businesses that are in KTP are SMEs. They're all looking for this sort of technology. So they might not be Cisco, they might not be a household name, but they could be really significant within an industry, and you've probably got a easier chance or better chance of talking to someone senior about your product and what it might do. But use your networks as best you can, and whether they could be alumni networks or business networks or any social networking that you can do. It's all about people.
So earlier, both Sally and yourself had both mentioned accelerators and incubators. Is that a bit of a minefield? So knowing myself that there are probably hundreds of them across the UK, are they all good? Do we need to be careful, or does a company need to be careful if they're going straight into one, what they're going to get out of it? Are they going to actually progress, or is it going to be a bit of a waste of time? Be interesting to hear your thoughts actually on accelerators and incubators and what their role is for a startup.
I think some are very good and provide very tailored programs of support. I think particularly, I think do your research like anything. Try and get into a specialist accelerator program if you can, because they have got the links with the people that are likely to buy your product or may even invest in you. I think other incubations are kind of glorified landlords with shared working space. So yeah, just do your research and talk to other people who are involved in the program where you can. There's nothing like a bit of peer feedback to find out whether people felt it was worth it. And just beware anybody that asks large amounts of money up front for anything.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I think I just want to stress they vary tremendously in kind of scope and size and features and the stage that you're at as well. So if you're a startup, you should be considering a different group of accelerators to later stage scale-ups, and they all offer quite different things. I think one of the particularly valuable things that we've seen at accelerators that you may not be kind of considering when you initially think about accelerators is that they can be a good source to get other founders on board if they're the right kind of accelerators, because we much prefer to see more than one founder in companies for a whole variety of reasons that maybe we'll discuss later. But if you can have 2 or 3 good founders in a company, that tends to result in a stronger outcome and a quicker outcome. So they can be very good for that.
Oh, so actually that moves me quite nicely on to talking about having a couple of strong founders in your company. My sort of next question was going to be around, so what should your team actually look like? Who should you get in to be a part of it, and as part of those teams? So Sally, did you?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and I think all of us, particularly angels, we do invest in people. So you could have the greatest product in the world, the greatest bit of IP, but if an angel kind of looks at someone and doesn't feel confident that person is capable of delivering that plan, then they're never going to invest. It can be a kind of a more average piece of IP or average, but if you've got a fantastic entrepreneur, then you're going to engage people, and people are going to have confidence in you. So, it is a problem, because people say, well, how can I afford to take on people? I'm at a startup stage. So, again, I think trying to build a really good advisory team around you, trying to get people in the industry who will perhaps be part of an advisory group to you, that always really impresses investors. Because in some ways, if you've been able to sell your concept and your story to somebody like that who's willing to put their time and their name to something that you're doing, then that for us is a big tick in the box. But as Ed says, I suppose in some ways, you'd rather have a strong lead entrepreneur that's going to raise money to bring people in than a kind of a team that hasn't got the right mix in it. Perhaps they're all technical people, or they haven't got, strength in depth. So, what I would say is try and get an advisory team, and also, if you're not the right person to lead the business, then, acknowledge that and say part of the money will be to get a sales director in or a CEO in. There's nothing shameful about that.
I was going to ask, have any of you found where, I suppose you're probably on the other side of the desk for this, but have you seen it where it's hard to perhaps relinquish that kind of control, I suppose, where actually there is probably someone better laying in the wings who can take the company forward, but it was your idea?
We see it all the time. And it is rare. If you've set up a business, I acknowledge how incredibly hard it can be to let go, because you're probably used to dealing with everything and you have everything at your fingertips, but you also have to acknowledge you might be the reason why your business isn't growing. And if you can do that, you're putting yourself on the fast track to success, because you realize you understand your own limitations and you know where you need to get help. It's incredibly difficult though when you've got a lot of emotional a lot of that emotion has been invested into your business, to let go and relinquish those reins. Incredibly difficult, but can be very, very worthwhile.
I'd say no investor ever wants to go into a company knowing that they need to change the founder and CEOs at a later point. You want your founders to kind of last the journey, and that's what you're testing for when you're kind of first meeting them. So it is important to, try to think this through before you meet investors. What your founder team should look like. I second what Sally was saying. It's important to have diversity in that founder group. So you'll have technical people, but also commercial people, and different. People have different styles about how we think about problems. And what we really want to see is founders that trust each other, that but will also challenge each other. Just a mistake sometimes we see is first time CEOs try to do everything themselves, and dominate the other founders sometimes, and that's kind of the opposite of what you're really trying to do as a leader, which is to bring out the strengths of the other people in your team, and to recognize where those strengths are, and of course where there are gaps as well, because those gaps will need to be filled later on in the journey, perhaps. So that's that's perhaps the most important sort of role of a CEO.
Oh, thank you.
So the issue of control actually is quite interesting, because I think it almost becomes self-selecting, because I think entrepreneurs that you come across that are frightened of giving up that control, either in their own job or to outside investors, usually they're not usually suitable for equity investment. So if as a person that you want to be in control of everything, then probably going out to raise equity investment is not for you, because trying to grow a business in partnership with an equity investor isn't going to work like that.
Is this where it's really important to build your team very quickly before then you go out to then the market and to the investment community?
Well, for me, it's important to have a core team, and one founder, one CEO is just going to be a much harder sell than 2 or 3 founders. So I mean, coming back to this advisory thing that Sally mentioned earlier, that can be a good way to get some of those advisors can end up being founders sometimes. You see that, or they end up some of them might even fund the company. Sort of they're a bit more than just advisors. but by the same token, you can't just fill the gaps. You need people that you really believe in and trust, and they have to trust you. And so you do need to sort of do your due diligence on your kind of founder team. But I would say, yeah, you want 2 or 3 core roles covered, and definitely covering technical and commercial, and maybe marketing or some other function. But probably if it's a seed stage investment, you can start to build out the rest of the team over the next couple of years.
Cool. So I've got my company, I've got my idea, I've got my team around me. Where should I go to look for investment? What are, I suppose, my next steps?
One easy place, if you want to come, is the Innovate website. You can go to, it's called the Innovation Funding Service. That's our funding engine, if you like, and that's where you'll see all of our competitions listed, and that's where you might get that first leg up into kind of taking your idea from the sort of almost from the workbench and putting it into reality. So that might be a good starting point, and that's a simple online kind of portal, so something everyone can do. I guess what Sally and Ed might suggest are slightly more complicated routes.
No, I think that's a great place to start. And so many of the companies that we've invested in have been through an Innovate program or received grants. And for us as investors, actually, that's great because it's a tick in the box. We know that somebody's done some due diligence. It's actually passed a hurdle. So we regard that as very much a beneficial thing for the company. And it's obviously funded some research and development as well. But I think the fundamental question to ask, if you're at that stage is, are you investment ready? Do you know what sort of funding you need, how much you need, what sort of funding you need? That's the fundamental question. Don't go out and scattergun approach all sorts of, different types of lenders. That's the important thing to get right first before you approach anybody, because you only usually get one chance at this. So don't blow it.
Absolutely. Yeah, just to second Richard's point, it's an endorsement for us if a company's got grant funding, especially around technology, and if it helps them get a customer or kind of prospects as well, that's an even bigger plus. So you should always consider that. In terms of funding, as Sally says, don't let funders educate you on how to do this right. That's a very expensive way to learn. There's lots of people that can tell you, how to write a pitch deck and how to sort of present your case. We've mentioned accelerators before. They can do a good job of that, but any of your advisors ought to have some experience of that. And crucial thing is, how much money do you need? Because that will determine kind of where it makes sense to get it from. And then once you've determined that, you need to tie that up with what the pitch is, how much you're giving away in terms of equity, and what the kind of general terms are going to be. If you're looking for seed, if you're doing a seed round and you're looking for VC investment, nowadays the kind of typical range is £1 to £5 million as a seed round, and you'd expect to give away between 20 and 30% of your equity. So those are the normal parameters. If you want to try and go outside those normal parameters, investors are going to resist. So I would advise you to kind of work within those parameters, because that will just make your life a lot easier.
Talking about sort of seed series A's onwards, when is the right time to start looking for that next round of investment? I mean, is it a matter of, I can see the lights are being turned off in a month's time, should I go out now? Or, is it quite obvious when the next time is to go and sort of knock on some doors?
I think part of being investment ready is actually knowing what your funding strategy needs to be, and how many rounds that you think you're going to need to actually get you to a place where you're generating sufficient profit. So that's really part of your whole overall planning. What investors hate is surprises. So if there's a known thing that you're going to have to go out and raise several rounds of funding, that's fine. And we do recognise that sometimes plans don't go, exactly as they should do, and you might need to come back for emergency funding. But raising funding can take a lot of time and energy. So plan it, for an angel round, and we fit very sort of neatly under the sort of seed capital VC. So we're really anything from 100,000 up to 1 million, and typically it can take up to 3 months to actually get the round completed by the time people have done due diligence. Having said that, it's been a bit quicker lately. I don't know whether it's because everything's been done online. Investors seem to be making quicker decisions, but you need to allow 3 months. And if you've got to go for another funding round, give yourself 6 months to do it, because the last thing you want to do is end up running out of money and having to take a deal that's not a great deal for you. I mean, the best thing you can get is hopefully 2 VCs that are interested in you, and then taking the best deal from them.
Can I give a top tip from an Innovate perspective as well? Is that promised money is not money in the bank. And when we're looking at your finances, as we will do in Innovate, it's really important that either you have a really good letter of support from your backers that say, we will support this if you get the money, or have the money in the bank. Really important, and it's a mistake that a lot of people make. I was looking at an application this week, and the inference was that they had the support of their backer, but when you read the letter, their backer was just saying, "Yeah, we know we know you're there, and we know you're doing all right." And there's no promise there whatsoever. So either don't put letters like that in, or get the money in the bank.
So I feel quite privileged myself in my role to work with startups, both regionally and nationally, as well as investment funds as well. But I know when I first started in this space, I was faced with interesting terms that I'd never really heard before, like investment funds, angels, VCs. And my first question to myself was, what on earth is the difference? Aren't they all just giving a company money? For people, I suppose, that are watching that maybe don't really realise the difference, I don't know if someone can perhaps highlight what they are.
Who wants to say something? Well, I mean, basically look on it as a bit of an escalator, really. It's a journey. So, I mean, you probably start off with grants and friends and family, perhaps support from an incubator. Then you'll kind of decide what company you are. Are you going to be a cash generative business that actually doesn't need external investment? And then you can go to a bank and borrow money to grow your business if you need to, or use your own profits. If you're a real growth ambitious company and you need to get that external capital into the business that you don't have to repay, it's part of your share capital, then you're looking at equity finance. And there's really then probably 3 areas that you can go to. Angels for really anything up to 1 million. And like Ed said, we're going to be looking for a significant minority stake in the business for those first couple of rounds. If you're a kind of big enough and ambitious enough company, then venture capital 1 to 5 million is where you should be looking at. And thirdly, I suppose crowdfunding. I mean, there's all sorts of different crowdfunding sites. Some do debt, some do, rewards based. So, if you're developing a t-shirt company, you can tell people about it and get them to pay up in advance. So that type of thing is perfect for that. Or there are equity crowdfunding platforms that can sit very neatly alongside angels. I know there's, we could probably talk for half an hour about equity crowdfunding platforms, but they do have their place. But do your research, and then so that's kind of the journey you should be looking at. But at every step of the way, get advice, make sure that's the right step for you, and plan.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because I was going to jump right in with questions about crowdfunding. I mean, I think, I personally have seen, obviously, crowdfunding, as you say, for like t-shirt companies and things like that. But is it quite common for technology companies to crowdfund as well?
I mean, this all comes down to, what we mean by technology, and I think this has been an issue that has kind of plagued the investment industry. So if it's a question of a fairly simple piece of hardware or software, I think crowdfunding can be an excellent solution, because you know what needs to be built. Investors can come to their own judgment about what the product market fit is, and it's really essentially a piece of engineering to mass produce the object, perhaps, if it's a piece of hardware. But if it's tech in the sense of what we would call deep tech, where you're selling to more sophisticated buyers, perhaps not consumers and so on, then I think crowdfunding is less suitable in most cases. There's always going to be exceptions, but the markets are going to be specialized, and investors may well want to talk to some of the customers or potential prospects, for example, and that's going to be a hard thing to do in a crowdfunding platform, at least with today's technology.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, go on, Sally.
What you don't get with crowdfunding is kind of the expertise that kind of a VC fund or angel investors bring. I mean, it's so much more than money. It's contacts, expertise, support for the next stage. So you don't get that with crowdfunding. I mean, we work quite closely with some of the crowdfunding platforms. So once we've got a lead angel investor on board and a syndicate, if we need to top up, then actually some of the crowdfunding sites are great for that, just to get some retail investors in to top off around.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring the product market fit issue back in here as well. I think where you have a strong technology but you're not quite sure about the product market fit, I think but if you get it right, maybe there's the big market and you could grow it very quickly. That's the sort of seed stage investment that VCs like to consider. But it takes investors that are prepared to really put the effort in to understand the market and the niche technology, perhaps, that you're basing it on. Whereas in contrast, crowdfunding platforms, the product market fit is pretty much most often less of a problem. It's it may be that not everything is certain, but it's not hanging in the air. It's a question of people, if this product existed, yeah, of course people would want it. Maybe there might be issues about the price or some of the exact features, but in general, that there isn't that uncertainty around the product market fit. So I think that's another way to think about that distinction.
Thank you. So I'm very conscious we've got about 7 minutes left, and actually I have a key question I want to actually ask Richard. So I personally had only heard of KTPs from up to about a couple of years ago, and we can all see your lovely sticker in the background that says "I love KTP," and that we know you're the knowledge transfer partnerships manager. But for the people who don't know, what is a KTP? What are the advantages of being on one of those projects? And
okay.
Yeah.
In 7 minutes, that's a challenge. First of all, KTP's been around for 46 years. We've got a really long track record. We know what we're doing. We put businesses together, or we help businesses work with the universities. So if you've got an idea and a challenge and you want to work with a university because they've done the research, but you want to kind of commercialize it, we provide a mechanism to allow you to do that. We will grant fund up to 75% of the project costs at the moment. If you're in Wales, that is. For everyone else, it's up to 67%. But for that money, that might be something between £30,000 and £40,000 a year that you as a business would need to put into it, which is why sometimes it's really helpful to have an investor on side, because if you're just starting up, you might not have that money to hand. But you put that money in, you're going to get a program of support and sometimes equipment and a member of staff to deliver this project, and it's probably worth somewhere in the region of £200,000 over the course of a couple of years. So it's actually a really good package if that's what you need. If you've already got the idea and you kind of ready to go to market, possibly KTP is not the right mechanism for you. But one of our other programs called iCure, if you are in that early stage and you maybe not set your business up yet and you're thinking about it, then there are other avenues for you to explore under the Innovate umbrella. But essentially, KTP helps you build a partnership between a business and a university. We put advice and support around that as well, so you get a really knowledgeable knowledge transfer advisor who will join your group representing me, because I can't get to 800 management meetings a year. They come in, they've got a wealth of experience. We support the academic team through the university. We support the graduate that gets recruited. We send them on training courses. We give them a really healthy training budget as well. So it's a really good package. You can't recruit a graduate cheaper and get everything that you get from a KTP. If it's right for you, we've had some amazing successes. We turn £1 of invested money into £7 or £8 in gross value added. So we're doing something right when the figures tell us that. Our associates that have been involved in the program tend to go off and either run research departments or become academics or run their own businesses. So they're really highly skilled and quite sought after by the time we finish with them, and often will earn significantly more than their contemporaries that haven't been through the program. So if it's right for you, it's a really good scheme. 75% of our projects are with SMEs, but we also work with some household names. BT, I had a quick look. BT have got 2 KTPs at the moment, both based in Northern Ireland. Orbital Innovation, sponsors of this event, have had 3 over the years, various different things, but I particularly love their My Spira app, which helps kids use their inhalers better. KTP covers a whole, we're sector agnostic, we're technology agnostic, we're location agnostic. If you've got a good idea, KTP's kind of a pretty open church, so come and talk to us.
I was going to say, so I think what's great is actually in our comments, Richard, we've actually had a number of people who said they've either about to start a KTP, or during a KTP, or have completed a KTP.
Cool.
So that's fantastic.
They're our biggest, if generally they work pretty well. Sometimes they don't work, and it all comes down to personalities at the end of the day, like any business arrangement. But when they work, they're fantastic. They really are, and our best advert are the businesses and the people that have been through them.
Knowing we only have a couple of minutes left, I actually have a key question I want for Sally and Ed. And basically, I would imagine you probably see hundreds of pitches a year. What do you look for when you're assessing whether it's a deep tech company involved in AI or any other company? What are the key factors?
I mean, for me, one of the things that ought to be quite easy to get right, and that's just, are you addressing a big enough market? And quite often we see, pitches that are, really addressing very niche markets, and that what that means is that even if everything goes really well for the company, it's never going to be, it doesn't stand the chance of growing into a big company. And most deep tech companies, and I'd have thought most AI companies, ought to be able to address a reasonably big market, and by that, you need to be able to count it in the billions of dollars, the market that you address. And so that's the easiest thing. Secondly, always vital to get the founder team right, and we've kind of talked about the founders and importance of having the right balance of skills and the right kind of leadership there, because this is a relationship that's got to last 5 years, maybe 10 years, and you want to make sure everybody is going to stay in the boat. For us, we're looking at deep tech, and so we like to see a defensive moat that can be either technology itself, or in AI and things like that, it can be generating data over time, something like that. And we obviously, I mean, I think those are the three kind of relatively easy things to get right when you're approaching investors.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sally, you have about 30 seconds.
Resilient, customer-focused entrepreneur with honesty and integrity, honesty about themselves and honesty with investors, and understanding, you know, to align your agendas for an ultimate exit.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Just very quickly,
Yeah.
Be prepared before you go into your pitch. Just practice, 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 practice.
Brilliant. And loads of comments saying this is gold dust for anyone with an idea, and just many people saying we just need a bright idea now. Lastly, thank you so much, Sally, Ed, Richard, for joining us. And thank you for all the attendees. This is the last workshop of the festival, which has been a great couple of days. And we'll be signing off with passing over to Peter Brady, CEO of Orbital, for his closing remarks. So thank you for joining us.